All right, so I'm pushing live now. And so as soon as it's live, I'll start talking. Hello, and welcome to Jason Cavness Experience. I'm your host, Jason Cavness. The Jason Cavness Experience is brought to you by Cavness HR. Cavness HR, focus on your business. We got your HR. Our guest today is a good friend of mine, Jared Wharton. Jared, are you ready to be great today?
Yes, I am.
Jared is a former Army veteran and a current owner and operator and founder of the Forward Brewery in DuPont, Washington. Jared, there's a lot going on in the world right now. How you holding up?
Oh man, bruised and battered, but not broken. We're, learning a lot one day at a time and learning a lot about ourselves. And, just learning how to survive something that we never could have predicted. But
yeah, like I think someone said a while ago, back in 2015, people were like, on job news, what are you gonna be doing in 5 years? No one got that answer right, did they? No one got that answer right.
Yeah, not even close.
Like you're doing business plan, no one plans for like worldwide pandemic, right?
Right.
Like, that's never in your plan.
Right.
So you'll find a saying about the Forward Brewery, and correct me if I'm saying this wrong, a safe place for people who don't need to be safe.
What we say is a safe space for people that don't need safe spaces. And it actually was a customer that said that to me, and I just was blown away by it. Because we are these rough, tough veterans of all different backgrounds and experiences. And there's very few places where we can go that we just feel like ourselves, that we can most times when we talk about some of our experiences, we're met with blank looks, and at FOB, when people are talking about whatever it was they did, wherever it was they did it, whether it was combat or just regular service time, there's no other place like FOB that is a safe space for people to just talk about what their experiences were, or make jokes, or just simply feel the camaraderie of the type of things we did.
Now, FOB is actually an Army term, right? Can you tell people what FOB is for those who don't know?
Yeah, absolutely. FOB, Forward Operating Base. So when you go to, when you deploy to war in Iraq or Afghanistan, we set up a FOB, a Forward Operating Base. It's where we live, work, eat, refuel, kind of where we base all of our operations from to conduct whatever it is, whether it be rebuilding communities or conducting combat operations. They all start from a FOB.
So this would be like a general question. But from your point of view, what do most, like we'll call like regular civilians, get wrong about military veterans? What misconceptions are there out there?
One of the biggest is that everybody thinks that the Army's out there, boots on the ground, have firefights every day. When the reality is, a very small percentage of us really did that type of war that you see on TV. Most of it is logistics and paperwork and making sure people are fed and safe and healthy. So it's a big machine that out there that it takes all of us to support each other. So I think that's probably the biggest one, that people just assume everybody's out there being a trigger puller, doing combat operations, and it's just not true.
Even like the so-called trigger pullers, even them, I think I read somewhere like for every minute of quote unquote action, they spend like 10, 20 hours just like being bored or getting ready, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, 99% boredom, 1% absolute terror.
Yeah, exactly. So you've been accepted and participated in some great programs along your entrepreneurship journey.
Yeah.
One of them being Cornell.
Yeah, it was a big blessing. I was actually in Afghanistan in, I think it was 2013, when I applied for the Veterans Entrepreneurship Boot Camp through Syracuse University and the Institute for Veterans and Military Families. And so 2014, I went to Cornell. So it was kind of a behind the scenes, about a month of intensive, working on your business plan and things like that they had us get ready. And then when we got there, it was just 2 weeks of entrepreneurship by fire hose, and it was an awesome experience. I had never felt so uh, out of my element than probably when I first joined the Army, where it was just words that had to do with business and that I had never heard before, used before. And this is coming from a guy who, when I decided to make FOB, uh, I had to Google what a business plan was, because I didn't know. I didn't have any of that background. So I just figured, well, I better start it. What's a business plan? What's that look like? What should mine look like? And then getting to Cornell, where I saw what I thought was a business plan was really just an idea hastily scratched on the paper, and then they helped me refine it, and um, really kind of open up my mind to how people in business really do think, and therefore I took those as clues of this is probably how I should think.
And so you're like, man, this is too much for me. I'm overwhelmed. Let me get out of here. Or like you just buckle down and say, I made a commitment to doing this. Let me knock this out.
The second is always kind of my attitude of something of like, I might be out of my element, but I'm going to be able to at least try to fight above my weight class one way or another. So, yeah. And, I just knew it was an opportunity that not too many people get. So if I have a chance to learn from somebody who's done it before, who's really been entrusted by an Ivy League school, I'm going to take every ounce of that instruction and try to soak it up.
So this is my personal opinion. I'm probably take some flack for this, but I think there's a lot of military veterans out there who not exactly expect a handout, but expect it to be easier for them. Like, I serve the military, I should get this, I should get that. Where's my stuff at?
Sure.
And that's not the case, right? There's opportunities out there, but you got to find them and look for them, and make an effort, right?
Yeah, and I saw that a lot through tying that into what you had asked about the program at Cornell. I saw that a lot. So you saw people there who clearly probably weren't going to ever start a business, but they were taking the ride of
taking the space from someone else who could have used it.
Of a cool experience. And then, I think most of the people that went through the program were genuine and had real dreams of starting and running a business someday. But however, you have some who are just kind of taking the tour of cool opportunities out there for veterans. And yeah, unfortunately, you nailed it. There, unfortunately, those people probably did ultimately take a seat away from somebody who could have used it more. But also, I try to give everybody grace and understanding that maybe they just where I saw the difficulties and saw them as a challenge that I needed to rise to. Some people just realized that maybe it was too much for them. So,
or maybe they got there and after the first day, like, man, this ain't for me. And like, well, I'm here anyway. Let me enjoy this vacation. Right.
Sure.
So what other type of programs are you taking advantage of?
I have come to a couple talks here at Bunker Labs. I've taken part of the Veterans Business Development Center they're out of Seattle, but they come down to Tacoma once in a while. So it's pretty cool. What else? I got to go to Veterans Edge down in Austin, learned from some great people. And, it was just kind of an intensive workshop of looking at where our struggles were in business and kind of being in a roundtable environment with other veterans and figuring out, what my blind spots were. Because again, when you're in the middle of it, to tie it back into military stuff, when you're in the middle of the fight, you can't always see what's coming.
What's the old thing? Don't see the forest for the trees concept.
Absolutely. And then, so being able to surround yourself with people who maybe are in a totally different industry, but it's still business, and they are hearing your struggles and say, hey, have you thought of this? Have you thought of this? And, you have to, it's really a gut check of having to say, even if, because a lot of times somebody's giving you advice and you're like, well, first of all, I didn't ask for the advice, but second of all, maybe I should at least absorb it, maybe at least process it and give it the respect that this person felt the need to share it with me, and process that instead of just immediately just throwing it away, because a lot of times things don't look like a fit until you've had time to chew on them for a while.
Yeah, that's great advice on advice, right? 'Cause a lot of people want to give you advice, but you got to understand it's from their lens, right? Like even if another brewer may give you advice, maybe has a different brand or different location,
Yeah.
So I definitely think you got to take with a grain of salt. I think most people give advice out of the goodness of their heart.
Sure. I think I tend to, look at the world that way. That I think pretty much everybody is coming at you with the best intentions. You got to be careful of who you're listening to and what you're feeding yourself. But for the most part, I think people are coming from a genuine, love of each other. So
Can you talk about this? So, how do you go about picking what opportunity to choose from? Like, because I'm a big believer, like Wayne Gretzky says, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So I believe in applying for
sure,
stuff, putting stuff, even like stuff like I had no chance. And when funny with me, in my point, everything I applied for, I thought I had no chance. I got accepted to.
sure.
Everything else, I man, this is a shoe and no way, and I don't get accepted. Like,
Yeah, yeah. I love the Gretzky quote. You didn't see him take too many shots from one end of the ice to the other, though. So that's kind of the math I'm trying to do on a daily basis. Is this a wild Hail Mary, or is this a calculated risk that I can mitigate those risks in some way, whether it be through costs, or if the answer is that I just have to solve them with my own labor. Um, so, looking at those risks and understanding what they are before you take them is kind of the first real hurdle that you have to get over, and then figure out, does this line up with who I am, what my values are, what I see this business being long term. And if it doesn't say yes to all those things, then it's a pass, and I'll let somebody else do it.
yeah, can you apply to one of these programs? It's taking time away from you running your business because there's
Yeah.
you got to do some kind of pitch deck, some kind of business plan.
Right.
There's some requirements that you have to do that takes time what you're really doing, right? So is a reward worth it,
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So, Jared, you recently were accepted, I think, some kind of brewery program.
Yeah. So this is exciting. And probably one of the um, hidden benefits of this shutdown and everything, we've been able to kind of look at, what days are actually crucial for me to be at the brewery and which days are not. And so we saw some openings in the schedule, and I still haven't used all my GI Bill. So I applied to and I'm going to the craft brewing and distilling program down at the South Puget Sound Community College. So they've built an awesome facility, but it's their brewing facility is going to put mine to shame. But so it's really awesome. We get to learn from some great people who've been in the industry for a while. And then, and I also like to do that sort of thing where I'm at a point where a lot of people wouldn't think they needed to continue their education, but I brought in an intern from their program last year to do his internship with me. And at the beginning, it was me sharing information with him. By the end of it, he was bringing up issues that were over my head, and where I was familiar with them, I didn't have as firm a grasp on those topics and the science behind them that I would like to have. So I thought, you know what? Why not focus on making myself better and hopefully making the business better?
So you hear the term master brewer sometimes. What is a
Sure.
master brewer? And how do you become one?
There's a lot of debate about that because you have some people who are fresh out of, say, one of the elite brewing schools in Germany or UC Davis, and then they're let loose on a big fancy brewing system and they're calling themselves a master brewer. But to me, it kind of goes back to like the term pit master, or in Texas terms, where you have to be able to take raw ingredients of varying quality and turn out a world-class product with those and do it consistently. And your customer should have no idea that perhaps maybe this year's batch of hops or barley was not as high quality as, say, the previous batch due to variations in weather or crop yield. And so a true master brewer is a kind of I try to avoid the term. Like my wife has said it a few times, like, oh, he's the brew master. I'm like, well, I'm just the guy that makes beer. But yeah, master brewer is somebody who really is a true craftsman, with their field, and is able to consistently do that.
So how does one become a brewer, so to speak? I mean, I'm sure you just can't wake up one day and put some hops and grains and mix it around, right? Like, what's the
Yeah.
process?
So my story with that is, back in 2002, I saw a TV show with Alton Brown, the cooking show, and he made a batch of beer, and I thought, well, shoot, me and my buddies are sitting around drinking beer on the weekends. Why not try making it? And the first batch was absolutely horrible. We totally botched it. Apologies to Alton Brown. Um, but then after that, we made a couple little kits, and I thought, this is fun. I like this. I can do this. And so I started reading, and just from 2002, from that point on, I was just kind of constantly refining my process, and ingredients that I was able to, and playing with them, and playing with recipes, and finding out what I like to brew. And so eventually, when I got to the point of opening FOB, I had to make a decision. Did I go with a big system that I've never played with before, or get something that kind of looks like a really, really big version of my homebrew system? And so that's eventually what I did. So try to lower that learning curve a little bit. But really, just, today's a learner's world. I mean, we've got every opportunity at your fingertips, whether it be YouTube or just, someone's blogs. The best people in the world are sharing their knowledge right now about these things, and it's there for you to learn. And I'm constantly reading books that are a little bit over my head, but trying to get everything I can out of it. So I think, really, if somebody's bound and determined to do it, they can do it. I mean, I did.
So not counting your own beer, what's the best beer you ever had?
So that's two parts. I have a two-part answer to that. I consider very few beers in the world to be absolutely perfect. And so for me, it's there's a little brewery in Germany called Monk, that does Monksbacher lager beer. For me, that is probably my desert island beer, and then next to that probably be Pliny the Elder, double IPA out of California from Russian River Brewing Company. I've never found a flaw, never found a more balanced or flavorful at the same time. So for me, those are kind of what's on my horizon of someday I want to be as good as either of those.
So that first beer, was it made in a monastery?
No, no, it's just a small family-owned brewery. But again, just a very simple, very pure, and perfectly crafted beer.
The reason I asked, because my perfect beer is a beer from Germany, and we went to a monastery for one of those like weekend trips. Sure. And the monks have been making beer there since 1500, right? Yeah. And the name you just said sounds so familiar with this monastery, right? It's like this, to me, that's perfect beer. These German monks made it, right? Like 1600, right? Same formula. These big mugs like this, right? Yep. You think you need more than one, but one is all you need, Yeah. So yeah. So
I learned a lot. It took me, when I first got to Germany, I kind of had the wrong attitude, where I was kind of wondering where all my big IPAs and stouts and stuff were, and I was bored with these boring German lagers. And I think about a year in, I started realizing that, wait a minute, these are fantastic. It just really had to kind of beat the American beer nerd out of myself until I learned to really appreciate it.
I was stationed in Germany twice. Always kill me. People like just stay in the barracks room, stay on base, and drink Budweiser and Coors. Like, are you kidding me? Right? Like just out the gate is the best beer you've ever experienced in your life, right? Yeah. I never got that, but hey, to each its own. So why become an entrepreneur?
I have visions and goals for myself, for my family, that I didn't see any other way there unless I made these opportunities happen for myself. I'm probably a pretty bad employee. I don't think any boss I've ever had, like, they always liked me a lot. I always got good performance evaluations and stuff, but I'm probably a big pain in their butt if they were honest. And I'm just the type of person that's always going to find my own way to do things because I think I'm better at it than what they're telling me that.
Yeah, I think most entrepreneurs have that no quote unquote problem or challenge.
Yeah. So, I was self-aware enough to know that I'm probably a pretty horrible employee, which means I should probably just, be my own boss. But yeah, I just had a vision for Fob and um, I couldn't let it go. So,
So from the day you got the idea, how long was the process from getting the idea to open up your doors?
oh man, I mean, that's a really long time. I was 2011 in Afghanistan, hanging out with buddies um, in 2x4 covered outside areas, smoking cigars and stuff, and I just kind of had that thought of, would be cool if we had a place like this back in the States where we could have beers and stuff. Um, so that's when as I said earlier, when I Googled what a business plan was, and so that's 2011, and then fast forward to 2014, I'm finally actually getting some entrepreneurial training, um, and then getting money and going through all the process of formalizing the corporation. And 2017, I finally opened the doors. So 6 years.
Or you're getting started, so to speak, right?
Yeah, 6 years till I said, well, my bank account empties. I might as well open the doors and see if I can do some business.
We talked about this before. Talk about the process of picking your building, like because we live in the
Sure.
South Seattle area. There's DuPont, Puyallup, Tacoma,
Sure.
different areas. How hard or easy was that to get a location?
Oh man, it was so hard. I was committed to the idea that Fob would be as close to the front gates as I could possibly be. Um, so then I had to start looking for a place that kind of fit that value that I set for myself, but was also somewhere I felt people would actually want to go, because there's some shady areas that are a little closer to the front gates,
Like most army bases,
right. So and I don't remember who said it, but somebody said to me when I was looking at a particular location, they said, well, that's a cool place, I'd go there and have a couple beers, but I wouldn't take my wife there on date night. And to me, I'm like, okay, now I need to refocus, because so I had to start looking. And I really had something in my head that was wildly different. And then when I found the location that I did, it was, about a mile from two different gates of post, a lot of, traffic in the mornings and afternoons from soldiers, in a highly um, veteran and military populated community of DuPont. And everything just kind of checked the blocks of what should have made sense, and ultimately where I chose to go.
Now, when most people think of breweries or like tap rooms or drinking beer, they think of the single men,
Sure.
wild nights. But you actually have a family oriented operation, right?
That's been really difficult. Yes, we try to focus on not just being a place for single guys. We try to encourage women, whether they be veterans or not, because as I said, we're in a community that's almost 70% veteran or military. Well, their spouses are all there as well, so it's FOBs for them too. It's not just for their husband or wives that are currently serving. So we were, and then it has been a struggle dealing with the family friendly aspect. I think that's because we're such a, as we said earlier, a safe space for people that don't need safe spaces. Is a lot of our initially, a lot of customers just kind of let the kids run wild, because they feel, I think they ultimately, again, it was a compliment, because they felt this is a place their children could be safe. But from a business standpoint, we had to kind of nip that in the bud. And so, but long term, we are focused on how do we change our tap room someday to really be welcoming and comfortable and safe for all ages. But yeah, we do want to have games, and one of our favorite things is seeing that husband, wife, mother and father sitting there with their children, having a couple beers. Maybe one of our food trucks is outside and they're having a burger or some pizza and playing Jenga or whatever it was with the kids. That we love that. It's the best feeling in the world to see that.
Another thing I like about what you're doing, like most breweries, like you go there, drink beer, maybe watch TV,
Sure.
you might have some food, but I like to say you do a lot of experimentation and see what sticks, right? Like you've done comedy nights,
Sure.
open mic nights.
Yep.
What else? Beer and yoga.
Yeah.
The food trucks. Can you talk about that process, just trying to experiment and see what sticks and see what help diversify your business?
Yeah. We've had some successes and some failures. Um, so really it just, came from necessity of like, hey, we need to, some of these nights aren't as good as we had hoped they were. How do we maximize this, or, revenue in times where, business is down or whatever. And um, I think the first time we did comedy was just strictly of like, hey, it'd be fun to do a comedy night. And I actually heard a news story about some comedian who's a veteran, and I actually sent them an email right away and said, hey, what would it cost to get this guy at Fob? And it was just an obscene number. So I thought, okay, well, there's no way I'm paying that. So are there any veteran comedians in my area? And I found Josh Firestein, who's a veteran Army Ranger and comedian. He traveled the country and just absolutely hilarious. And so he put together a show of all veteran comedians, and it was an absolutely great night. And then since then, we've just kind of kept those going, and those are really fun and good. Then that'd be in the success column. One of our not so, one of our, I won't call it a failure, but we quit doing it, was like open mic. It was awesome people playing awesome music, and I think it was people just a lot of people in our specific customer base didn't like coming in and seeing somebody they weren't familiar with, and so it just wasn't a fit for us. But yeah, we do when we're not in a pandemic, we're doing beer and yoga once a month, which is awesome. You just get all these people, from very experienced people to first timers, coming out doing yoga, then hanging out for an hour afterwards, having a beer or two and a cider. So
And so
awesome.
you also were able to get like a relatively big name country star too, right?
Sure. Aaron Crawford. He's been there a few times. And
How do you get him initially?
Man, that's a good question. That's probably better for my wife. She's the one that's been responsible for most of these acts. But oh, I think that actually came from a mutual friend of ours that owns Boss Mama's food truck, Boss Mama's Kitchen, which is awesome. Some of the best burgers I've ever had. Um, so she was familiar with them and kind of put us in touch and did a show with them, and that was absolute blast. Absolutely filled the house.
So what kind of new like programs you have coming up that you think about doing?
Man, right now there's nothing new on my horizon. Right now is we're in full on survival mode. How do we not spend money unnecessarily right now, and still provide our customers with our product, and keep people aware that we are still their home away from home when all this is over.
So talk about some of the challenges of COVID-19. Like how's that affected you? I mean,
Yeah, it's been rough. We've got a couple black eyes right now. It's been really tough. Initially our response was just take a knee. Just let's not try to keep up with a lot of the really big breweries that are able to can up hundreds of barrels of beer. So we just kind of took a knee and said, let's see what's going to happen, and then reopen, and we did, and for us it worked out pretty well. The second round of shutdowns is we're in kind of the same mode right now of let's focus on having a good product, and make improvements while we can, while we're reducing the number of hours we're doing business. Um, but yeah, it's been not being able to do like our private events, which that was a big part of our revenues, is doing uh, military hail and farewells or retirement ceremonies or promotion parties. That was a big uh, part of our income that just because of the social distancing guidelines in this state, we just absolutely can't do those right now.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure, like, even though you can do business, you still got to pay the lease of your building, pay for supplies,
Yeah.
pay salaries. Like, the cost of business doesn't go away.
Right. So we are able to kind of reduce labor costs. Um, we've kind of been strategic in that um, none of the people that work for me really are relying 100% on me. It's usually a side job for them in addition to what they do normally. Um, so, because I'd feel horrible right now if I had to cut somebody's salary that was relying. I mean, right now my wife and I are the only ones that depend on the company, but we're able to reduce that as well. And so, um, just having a focus on, working, trying to reach out to all the utility companies and the landlord and renegotiate things. And it's been good that almost everybody's been really understanding that, hey, this is something beyond anybody's control right now. So we'll figure it out when we get there.
You've been a good point. I think a lot of people, when they start a company and they start hiring people, they don't realize not only hiring that person, but you're basically hiring the family, right? Because the whole family
Sure.
is dependent on that person's salary, right? I don't
Yeah.
think a lot of people get that.
Oh yeah. That was a tough lesson for me. I didn't realize that up right away. When I opened the doors, I hired a few employees, and I think it was about 2 weeks later, it was like I got to pay these employees, which of course I'm going to do, but this might have been a bad choice because the business is never as awesome right out the gate as you put on your business plan. So, but that was a tough learning lesson, but I'm glad I learned it. So.
Is there anything you would have done differently with your so-called, like, your COVID-19 reaction plan? Anything you would have done differently?
That's a tough question. I don't think there is, because like any other options that I could have done would have required uh, spending a lot of money to keep up. Where I think the benefit of just uh, taking a half a step back probably was the smarter choice for me right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
So for the future business, like, how much longer can you deal with this for the COVID-19? Like, suppose COVID-19 lasts 2 years, or you gone out of business 6 months. Is there a time frame in your mind, like, hey, I gotta,
Yeah, I don't know. I know, that's something we're assessing every day. Some days we wake up with this, kind of defeated feeling, and we're thinking, I guess today's the day we're just going to pull the plug, and then, pray about it, and talk and talk and talk about it, and kind of look at our situation. And then the next day we wake up and feel like, okay, I got this. I can keep going. Um, but yeah, I mean, if it is another 6 months of this, I don't know if we would survive that. But if it's a couple, then maybe we can get everybody to work with us and we'll be fine. But long term, I think we're going to see the shakeout of a lot of small mom and pop type businesses, whether they be restaurants, bars, uh, little corner grocery stores and stuff, are going to really be hit
I mean,
hard.
who would ever thought, like, I would never thought this, like, who would have thought, like, restaurants and, like, small business going out of business, like, they shake their economy, right? Now I could see, like, like, there's like an oil industry shakeups, and like, well,
Yeah.
who would have thought restaurants and, small pop, like, would
Right.
have this impact on the economy?
Right. And a lot of these small restaurants and breweries, what people don't realize is mm, sometimes they are seeing a bump in regular business. However, the increase of costs in order to keep a safe and clean and effective operation during all these restrictions is so prohibitive that when you do add it up, it's taking a net loss. So they just won't continue to do it.
And for restaurants, the challenge, I actually saw you post this. I could be wrong. But like you have these restaurants. Suppose it's like a nice restaurant. You go there, family of four is like $120. Then you get like a $20, $30 tip, whatever the case may be. So you spend $150, family of four, nice experience. But now they will either like pick the stuff on the curb in a carton box and still pay the same amount of money, right? I mean,
Right.
From the consumer, it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
But from the business, it's like, what else? What else? I mean, what else stores do they have, right?
Right. And I don't know how long it will last. My instinct is that we're in a time where people are supporting their favorite businesses, supporting their favorite breweries, supporting their favorite bars in certain cases, because they love that company and they love the people behind it. But yeah, eventually, long term, people are going to get tired of paying fine dining prices for
McDonald's takeout.
I mean, I won't call it McDonald's because they're still creating world class product and food, but you still got to go home, plate it, serve it on your own. You're back at home. You could. So I don't think that'll sustain itself very long. But I mean, I could be wrong.
Do you still have your? I think it's called the FOB funding program. I think it was called, where you're like taking investments and ads and stuff like that, or?
So we have a couple things. Yearly, we do like a Bobbit Club, which is just kind of a pint club.
That's it. That's what I'm talking about.
Then we've got the Founders Club, which is like a lifetime membership where
and that's still going on, right?
We'll open it up again at the beginning of the year, and then we have an opportunity for we call it a corporate partnership program, where if a local business wants to buy one of those memberships, then we kind of let them promote themselves during like happy hour every day. So like if somebody wants to to advertise ABC Corporation by coming into FOB, and during their happy hour each day for a week, we allow them to do that. And again, it was just all came from one, how do we pay for our expansion, and two, how do we support the companies that are just like me around me? How do I help them grow? How do I help them get in front of the customer they want, which is the FOB.
So talk about the founder program. Like, what's the process for that? What's the requirements?
The founders program is we charge $500. It's a lifetime membership. You get a shirt, and you get a 20-ounce beer instead of a 16-ounce beer. You get discounts on stuff, and really the goal behind that was that we were going to build a kitchen with the funds we received from that, but COVID-19 has kind of eaten into that. But I'm still bound to determine that one way or another I'm going to make it happen. But
So here's a question for you. So the economy is kind of bad right now, and there's all these programs like small business are, right? Whatever the case may be. So I think there's two schools of thought. One school of thought is like, that giving these companies money and helping them out is actually a bad thing, because these businesses should go out of business, because the strong survive, Darwinism.
Sure.
By doing that, you're actually hurting the companies that would survive in this. What's your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I mean, if you asked me before I owned a business, I probably would have completely agreed with that. But we're in this time where you see a lot of the companies that took out like the Paycheck Protection Plan loans were multi-billion-dollar companies. So it's like, well, wait a minute. This was supposed to be for us little guys to.
I remember, like, Steak and Shake got one.
Yeah.
The Los Angeles Lakers got one. Like, how did the Lakers get a check? Like,
right. So
are you kidding me right now?
Right. So I certainly can understand the sentiment of, hey, if something's going to die, let it die. Something healthy will take its place. However, if that's the case, then I want to see a fair situation where nobody gets bailed out. But if we're gonna help anybody, let's help the small guys first, because after all, I mean, small businesses and small restaurants and bars in particular are by far the largest employer in this state and many states across the country. So I think it's worth saving.
Now, before you talk about your partners, don't you have a deal with, I think, the Seattle Sounders or something like that? Or some affiliation with them?
So there's the Armed Services Group is a wing of the Emerald City Supporters, a big fan club for the Seattle Sounders. So we are their official, the Armed Services Group. We are their official watch party location. So they all show up in their jerseys and their scarves and stuff, and we make sure we got the Sounders on for them.
So how do you obtain the ingredients for a beer? Like, so what are all the ingredients in a beer, first of all? Like hops, grains, what goes into making a beer?
So traditionally, a beer is made with, 4 ingredients, water, malt, hops, and yeast. And so, these days we're adding a little extra things like maybe some sugar to provide a drier finished beer. Maybe some fruit if it's that style of beer, but pretty much those are the 98% of the beers I'm making are those 4 simple ingredients.
Does the type of water matter? Can you like tap water? Has to be like a special kind of water?
Certain water's better for certain beers. We've got some pretty good water here in the Pacific Northwest. The only thing I really have to do to my water is remove the chlorine from the water. But I'm able to make some good tasting beers and almost the whole spectrum without really tweaking my water too much. Sometimes I do, just because I'm a perfectionist and I really want certain water profiles to highlight certain ingredients, whether it be an IPA or a big heavy stout. But for the most part, I just take our good clean water, filter out the chlorine, and I'm good to go. But
then how do you get the ingredients? Like, do you have a I don't know, a relationship with a certain farmer and you deal with one farmer, or is it like some kind of co-op where they sells grains to beer people? Like, how does that work?
I wish it was like that. No, I'm just, for the most part, calling up one of the either the local maltery up in Skagit Valley, or through one of the distributors, getting grain from them. But hops I try to get from the major growers in Yakima Valley. So,
and I'm guessing you have to bulk buy, right?
I do a little bit of both. So some I'm buying large amounts in bulk. I'm on the very small end of the spectrum. Some of the bigger breweries are contracting out their hops years in advance. I'm not quite comfortable with predicting how much hops I need 2 years from now. So I excuse me, I buy my hops on what's called on spot, meaning I buy them essentially as I need them instead of planning out a year in advance.
And so when you buy, are you in person you buy it, or is it like over the phone, computer?
Just over the phone or either I'm either placing an order online or calling up one of the growers and talking about stuff.
By doing that, how do you ensure it's the quality that you want? Like, how do you ensure the quality is top notch, or is just you bought it from them before, it's always top notch, and you got to presume it's top notch now?
Right. So these are the industry leading growers. I mean, Yakima provides like 70% of the hops grown in the whole world.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I would have thought Kansas or somewhere in Germany.
Right. I mean, in Germany, especially when you see the thousands of acres of hops, but it just pales in comparison to what's in the Yakima Valley and the absolute yield they're able to produce there is amazing. So with the growers I'm usually buying from, I know I'm getting the best in the world and fairly consistent.
So when you buy like your ingredients, is there like a shelf life for them, or you just buy them and store them somewhere and they're good forever, or you have to use them a certain amount of time?
I mean, I try to use everything as fresh as possible. I mean, there's been some experiments out there with keeping grain around and hops around. And everything matters in how you store it, because as soon as you open hops, they start deteriorating. So how you keep them matters. But I always try to keep everything as fresh as possible because I feel like you're going to taste it.
So I think you do a great job of naming your beers different, like military type names. How do you come up with these names? And give a couple of examples.
Well, probably our flagship beer is M4 American Blonde. So a blonde. It's kind of the beer. It's for everybody. It's when you don't want something that's too hoppy or malty, you want something that's just kind of a simple beer for a hot day or average day or whatever. So I named it after the biggest tool in the army, the M4 carbine. So that's our rifle, and everybody who's served in any branch of the military, they see that name, they first their thought is it's the rifle. So that's the one that is just identifiable, and to me, all my names kind of come from that place of when you hear it, what do you think? I don't want to be too obscure or like another one of our best sellers is our amber ale. It's snafu, situation normal, all effed up. And it's just one of those terms that we throw around a lot in the military, and people kind of know what it means. And so it just kind of, again, fit with our, and then like my flagship IPA is our Little Bird IPA. And not being a special operations guy, I always look at the Little Bird helicopters and think, oh man, those that's cool. Those whoever's riding on that thing is really a badass. And so that's kind of an homage to them. That's why I named my IPA that. But
Jared, how does what determines alcohol content in beer or alcohol in general?
Yeah, it's math. So when I take those grains and convert them to convert the starches into sugar in the kettles, then I'm able to take a measurement of just how much sugar is in that solution.
And so it's the sugar that determines it,
right? And so then so that at the beginning of the fermentation process, I have the potential for how much alcohol that what we call wort that eventually becomes, after it ferments, it becomes beer. I have the potential for how much alcohol could be made from that solution. And then after the yeast eats it, then I take another reading of that of the sugar content of that liquid, and the difference of that gives me an equation that just tells me the percentage of alcohol by volume it is.
Is there a limit by law as how high the alcohol content can be?
That's a good question. I don't know. I've pushed it a few times, I'm sure, but I think we had somebody brought me a bottle of 54% alcohol beer the other day that was absolutely disgusting, but I'm glad I tried it. Thanks, Jess. So yeah, I haven't gotten that strong yet, but yeah, typically through normal fermentation practices, it's tough to get over the 18% or whatever, but I've gotten to 17 so far.
So you already talked about this a lot already, but can you go into more detail about the FOB? Can you go into more detail about your company, like how it came about, your vision for it,
yes,
challenges, anything like that?
So really, as I said before, sitting around with buddies in Afghanistan and kind of wishing there was a place back home, kind of felt like that. I was really, the idea got reinforced in my head when I walk into an Applebee's with my wife and kids, and you see the local fire department's got their firefighter coat on the wall, and the t-ball teams on the wall, and that's cool. But it just kind of stuck out to me of like, well, why does this exist for our military? We're right by two major, an Army installation and Air Force base. why isn't there a place when you walk in that isn't celebrating them the same way we celebrate our local high school football team? I felt like, well, if nobody else is going to do it, then I am.
And I know before COVID hit, your vision was like have like a fob by each military base.
Yeah.
How you doing now? Have some kind of barbecue restaurant. Can you talk about your vision for that?
Yeah. So the vision really is that, what goes good with beer, and it's barbecue. And I'm going to keep some of my ideas a little close to the vest, but if the idea is that if we can have a fob, just like it would be in war at every major military installation, somewhere, wherever you go, you feel like, hey, this is a place, for me, but I want to have some little variations, because, if you're in Fort Bragg, things are different than when you're at Fort Lewis. So I want to have some things consistent across the board and some other regional variations as well. But yeah, I'm in the process now of determining, okay, what do I do next? How do I navigate a pandemic with, the business plan and visions for the future? How do I implement these ideas in a way that are cost effective, and still are representative of what, I believe the vision is. So, we're constantly kind of tweaking that and how that will look when it finally comes, if it comes.
So Jared, I think you've done a great job. You and your wife have done a great job on social media, like post stuff out, about your company. Talk about the process of that, like learning social media, utilizing correctly, all that kind of stuff.
Oh man. Like everything else, my wife and I just did it. We naturally kind of, I'm the Instagram person. She's the Facebook person. We just together had to learn, like, hey, going back to the what's the business plan? When we started this thing, what are hashtags? Do we have to use them?
I remember learning that.
Yeah, and it's and even that's a learning curve of do I want to use the same ones all the time? Do I want to use them? How do I want to employ?
You don't use 5 of them or 20 of them,
right? And who am I going to market to? Who am I going to try to capture? That's just, everything's been a big, one lesson after another of we kind of changed everything to be more of what's going to get somebody in my doors, because I think it's cool. I'm honored. I love that somebody in Nebraska is liking my posts.
They're not flying from Lincoln, Nebraska to
have
a beer with you.
They're not having a beer at in DuPont, Washington. So yeah, you have to look at it and say, where are my efforts going? Where are they paying off? These are things that, major corporations are paying to have somebody analyze this stuff, or we don't have that option. So we're just like, okay, how do we, what you're just looking at some of the free tools that Facebook, Instagram will give you for free to say, okay, what was effective, what wasn't effective. Okay, well that's not working. Let's switch to something over there. But also still trying to be true with who we feel Bob is.
So how do you plan your day? Because, as an entrepreneur, for your case, you got to make beer, you got to do sales, marketing, you have a family, wife, you have a life your size, baking business. Do you just wake up every day and just wing it and whatever comes to mind you do, or you actually have a plan that you do? Or is it a combination of both, like most people?
My wife will come unglued if I say anything other than it's a combination of both. And she's the end of the spectrum that is planned. She's got a schedule of what she's doing daily. I am winging it like it drives her absolutely crazy. So we balance each other out.
Good. So let's talk about this. We talked about this before in the past. Like when you're a business owner, you expect the people close to you or friends like to support you, like it's like minimal things. Like for me, I have times I ask someone who I know is really good, can you follow me on Instagram? Can you follow me on Facebook? Can you do whatever, right? And a month later, you say, "Hey, how's it? How you like this? Oh, I haven't followed you yet." You're thinking like, "Are you kidding me? Right? I didn't ask you for $1,000,000. I used to simply click a button on the computer, like,
Yeah.
and you're like, and then people you don't know like fully support you, right? Talk about the challenges of that, the frustration of that.
Yeah. It's funny. I mean, you see it from, again, I try to assume people are coming from a good place, but, um, and I don't, and when it's something is negative, I don't want to assume too much of why they are, like you see a lot of the memes of like, like, be careful who you call your friends, a lot of people are, hoping for you to fail, but you do see a lot of that where you're like, man, that's funny.
And it gets me too, like, you're supposed to give, add value. But at times, like, you ask people for stuff, do stuff for you, and it's after you've done stuff like 4 or 5 times, right?
Sure.
And they tell you no or don't do it, and then they come back for more stuff. Like, okay, like I really even value giving, but man, okay, what's the
Yeah.
limit to this?
Yeah. Yeah. It can be super I try to, I try to take everything with a grain of salt and try to not, um, look at people too judgingly for it, because we never know what people are going through. However, there's been times where, like, I sent out a, a, a survey, and these are people too. Most of them
I remember you telling me
most
this.
of them I like, I would say, most of these people I was somehow blood related to, and I think I got like a 10% response back to this, and it was literally all you had to do was like vote on like a few different items that sounded good to you or didn't, and and so I was venting to some other entrepreneur, and they go, "Oh wow, 10%, that's a great return." I'm like, "Wow, like really?" I literally like know these people, like I could call them and go to their house, and I got 10% engagement. That's and so it's a kick in the gut, but again, you try to be more thankful for those 10% than you are angry about the rest.
Yeah.
So
Or example, like someone opened a t-shirt shop, they're selling t-shirts for $10 a piece, and their friends are from, hey, give me a t-shirt for free or give
sure,
me one for $1.
sure,
And then the next day they go buy a $250 t-shirt from like a name brand, right?
right, absolutely, yeah, you see that a lot. And those are the blessings I've just had that blow me away. When somebody I consider a friend, but not a best friend, but somebody I've known for through elementary school all the way through high school, is wearing my t-shirts on. I see them posting on social media wearing one of my t-shirts. It just blows me away. Like, wow, you never know who's really in your corner, and it feels so good when you see somebody who's
Yeah, I'm
pulling
the
for
same
you.
way. Like when someone like posts, "Hey, I listen to your podcast," like, "What? People listen to my podcast?" It still
Yeah,
blows me away. Right?
yeah,
What? Do you? Okay, I'm still not used to that. Right?
yeah. And you never know. There's been times where somebody is just a lurker, and then out of nowhere you sit down, or they're sitting across from you and you're having a conversation, and they know everything you've been doing, and they pay attention. It's just that a lot of people consume things in different ways, and so I try to just, once I put it out in the world, I try to not look back at it anymore and think that, well, if I'm being me, somebody's going to you know see that and consume that in the right way.
So that's another good point. What's the importance of being transparent as a small business owner? 'Cause I know some business owners, they're not on social media to keep themselves. Talk about the importance of being out there, so to speak, and letting people know your personality, your values.
I mean, it's key. um I've learned that people will like you before they like your product, before they like your beer, and that affects, or I mean, whatever your product is, I should say, whatever your business is. There, if you are being honest, and real with them, it goes a long way, and people appreciate it. Even somebody who's maybe just an occasional customer, or maybe they're not your customer, but like in your case, doing HR stuff, whenever they come across somebody who might be having some of those needs, you're going to be the first person out of their mouth, because you're genuine and honest and clear. Um, so that goes a long way. So you can't just be, you can't put the brand on like a uniform. It's just, if you're showing people that you actually are what you say you are, then eventually it'll catch up.
So talk about something that from the time you started this journey to now that either you did not expect this or it came out a different way.
Besides COVID.
Yeah, besides COVID. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I won't name any one thing, but there's just been so many little lessons that eventually you're thinking, oh well, that was $1,000 I wasted. But
like me, whenever I go to my QuickBooks accounting, like I spend money on what? Like
right.
I waste money on this. Like what's I thinking? Like how stupid could I have been? Right.
Right.
At the time, oh, I need this right now to increase the business, do whatever the idea. Then you do it. Like I just wasted money.
Sure. I'll give you an example from again when I'm still applying to the entrepreneurship program. I'm still in Afghanistan. I paid an architect to do a rendering of what I would like FOB to look like.
Now you're like, oh my goodness, what was I doing?
No, I still love that drawing, but there's no way.
I mean, I know you don't like the money you paid though.
No, I don't like the money I paid for it. And we absolutely didn't use it because I couldn't, but however, that little bit, it was motivation for me. It inspired me. It kept me moving forward. So ultimately totally wasted money, but gained probably some momentum that helped me get going and open.
Good. So how long were you in the military?
I did 8 years.
And you were like counterintelligence, right?
Yeah, correct. Counterintelligence.
So you got to wear civilian clothes every day?
The first 4 years was uniform. Excuse me. First 4 years was in uniform doing what we call tactical CI, tactical human intelligence as well. Then the next 4 years was all more strategic and wearing.
So what is counterintelligence? What did you actually do without telling us like top secret?
Yeah, sure. Counterintelligence really is just about detecting insider threats. How are people trying to steal our information, or is anybody, whether purposely or inadvertently, revealing classified information, to people who shouldn't have access to that. So that's what I did was, either investigate or learn to counter those threats.
So one thing that was my pet peeve in the military, like you overseas, like the Korea, Germany, where the case be, on AFN, the ad would be, loose lip sink ships.
Yeah.
Don't tell people anything. Next commercial, go out in the community and make friends with everyone, right? Like which one do you want me to do, right?
Right. Well, it's always that you can always be proud of who you are and what you do, but they don't need to know when you're doing it and who you're doing it with and what your equipment is. But so that a big part of my duty was always just informing new arrivals to what those threats were, who was actively trying to get that information, and how to enjoy your life, but not divulge a lot of these things.
And where were you stationed in Germany?
I was in Bamberg, Germany.
Okay.
So we're a smaller post. I was in an office of military intelligence personnel, then but primarily serving 173rd Airborne. So,
were you able to do a lot of traveling and visiting, like the tourist stuff while you were there?
So say again.
Were you able to do a lot of traveling and tourist stuff?
Absolutely. Sometimes I feel a little bit guilty that I've seen more of Europe than I have my own home country. But it was awesome. I mean, you get a 3-day weekend all the time, and you're able to jump in the car and go to. I think it's the farthest we drove was we went to Budapest, Hungary. We drove to all the way to London. One time, it was a long story we won't go into, but we wound up driving from Rota, Spain, all the way back to Germany.
That's a drive.
So we wound up going up through Spain, up through France, over into Germany, and then all the way back down to our house.
I'm guessing that's more than a 3-day weekend for that one.
That was a long story, but But again, it was very difficult at the time. But me and my wife and kids are so grateful we had those opportunities.
I was in Wiesbaden when I was married. And one time, I think one of my kids had to do some kind of report on Anne Frank. I like, let's drive to Anne Frank Museum in Amsterdam. It's like a few hours away. Let's go. And we just went there, did the tour at Anne Frank. It's like, this experiences,
Absolutely. And yeah, same. My daughter Chanel wanted to do, for her 13th birthday, wanted to go to Anne Frank's house. So we got in the car and we went.
Yeah, I think so many Americans, they're like, I have friends to this day, haven't left the hometown,
Right.
Oh, to them, travel is like going to the next town over, that still people miss out,
I mean, there's people in Germany that did the same thing, that complained that there was no Walmart or Target, and completely missed out on the fact that they were, miles away from castles and history, and just something they'll never see again. But yeah.
So what has being in the military helped you with being an entrepreneur?
Kind of the general attitude that it can always be worse, and that at least nobody's shooting at me, and there's no one's going to die if I make a bad decision today. But just overall, just the general attitude of I can do it, I can overcome it, and telling me that I can't is probably going to just inspire me to prove you wrong.
Yeah, I think the military does a good job of, you get knocked down 10 times, you're going to get up to 11, knock down 20, and get up to 21st time. I think they do a good job, like putting resilience in you, so to speak,
Absolutely.
And a lot of, non-military entrepreneurs don't have that, I don't think, they'll give after 4 or 5 months and,
Yeah. And just knowing that you're not done working if the mission's not completed. And, you can't just, so having a focus and a drive to complete a mission is something we just, once you've started doing that in a real, especially in a combat environment, you're never going to lose that mentality of I've still got work to do. I can still work harder and find a way to get this, even if I have to change things a little bit, but we still have a mission to do. And ultimately that mission is the business.
So let's say there's a person out there, they want to start a business. Doesn't matter what the business is. What advice do you have for them?
The first thing I would say is, start being a good customer of similar type of businesses. Learn from them. Ask questions.
You're right. So many people like, I'm going to start a t-shirt business. I don't need advice from a t-shirt guy. I'm doing it differently. I'm going to do it better, right? At least go to them and learn from the mistakes, right?
Sure. Absolutely. One of the biggest things that I was not able to do, and I wish I had, and it just was because I was working in between the Army and opening the business. I had a job, and so I had to work. But so many business leaders that I've met have said to me, they're like, go volunteer, go get a part-time job at a similar business. And I just couldn't, I couldn't financially afford to do that. But that was the one thing that I still see as a hole in my experience, that I wish I had been able to do that. So yeah, like, go, if you can always work on your business. There's 24 hours in a day. You can work on your business plan before work, after work, be learning and researching on your breaks and before you go to bed at night. But go work for somebody doing what you think it is you want to do. And because like I learned when I was 20 years old, I thought I wanted to work in a professional restaurant kitchen, and after about one day in a restaurant kitchen, I thought, this isn't for me.
Like, this is hard ass work right here.
But yeah, so that's what I would say is, first dive in with making sure you really understand the business. Like sometimes people think, like in my situation, people see, they come into FOB and they think, oh, this must be great, and I want to open a brewery someday. And it's like, well,
all the behind the scenes stuff no one sees.
Yeah, you don't see all the 18-hour days. So and sore backs. So got to make sure you really know what you're getting into.
So speaking of 18-hour days, what do you tell people, those people out there like, well, I want to start a business, I want to get a degree, I want to do something different, but I have a 9-to-5 job and I can't do anything else.
If you want it, you will. I don't accept can'ts because there's just we waste so much time. Somebody will tell you, they don't have time to do a lot of self-improvement stuff, but then they'll have watched every game on Sunday. It's like, well, you did nothing to improve yourself, but or improve your knowledge, or even know your own situation with your business, but you spent 8 hours watching football games.
Yeah, I've said this before, like 168 hours a week, minus 40 of sleep. There's still 88 hours left. Like, and then we'll say, we'll take out 25 for social stuff, right? Family stuff. There's still like over 50 hours, now it might be from like 8 p.m. to midnight, and you got to give up watching TV or whatever case may be, or.
Yeah. And there's just no excuses anymore with podcasts, with
YouTube, all the free online courses.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you can learn a lot, but it's up to you to just, get it.
That's a good point. So your daughter's supposed to come in today and talk.
Yeah.
So talk about her book and how that came about.
Yeah. So she's 11, and last year she wrote a book, and it just really started as a summer project, where my wife and her, they read together all the time. They have their quiet time where they sit down and read together at the end of each night. And, they're each reading their own things, but my daughter's a voracious reader. And my wife kind of looked at her and said, you could write your own book if you wanted to. And her eyes kind of lit up. And so they made it their project last summer to write a book. And so she wrote Strong, Bold, and Courageous, Words of Wisdom from a 5th grader. And so it's her just kind of going through the alphabet of things that she wishes people knew and how they should treat each other.
I know you and your wife would be so proud when she did that.
Absolutely. I'd kind of heard what they were doing and what they were up to, and I thought it was cute. And then when I sat down to kind of read some of the first draft, I was just absolutely blown away. Like, this little girl's got some pretty strong things on her mind. So
now, is she gonna do a follow-up book?
We don't know. Initially, it was, in her mind was, so much work to get it done, that she doesn't want to look at a computer for a while. But I think now that, it's been a year, she's kind of, the idea's growing on her that maybe she'll do it again.
And y'all did the book on Amazon, right? Amazon Publishing.
Yes. I was sitting with her having lunch yesterday, and we were talking about some of the questions you had for her, and she blew me away. She said, sometimes I think that, since, parents raise these kids, maybe it'd be better if they knew these lessons,
That's a pretty damn good point.
And so I go, she was, well, maybe the next book should be written towards parents, but how am I going to get parents to listen to 11-year-olds? I said, I don't know, but I like the way you think.
I like the way she thinks. Yeah. Yeah. You definitely have a great daughter. I like the way she does a lot of great things. So, I forgot to ask you this beforehand, but do you have any like gifts or discounts to give away? Like, I know you can't give away beer, but I know you have like t-shirts and maybe a discount to your daughter's book or something like that.
Oh, I don't.
Okay. That's fine.
And the only discount I can give is I'll give you a good high five when I see you, because thanks to COVID-19, I'm not giving any discounts right now. I'm just asking for everybody's support.
Cool. So what's the craziest beer either you made yourself or you drink? Like crazy style, flavor, or whatever the case may be.
Oh, man, I don't know. I'll say that. My buddy Jeff, that now owns Sig Brewing in Tacoma, his previous employer, um, before he opened their own place. Um, I went in to buy some. I was getting some hops from him, and he handed me a couple beers to take as I was leaving, and one of them was an oyster stout, and I just thought, dude, I've heard of it. I've seen them before.
It sounds. I mean, to me,
I,
that sounds disgusting.
I don't like oysters. I don't.
See, I love
like,
oysters. That sounds disgusting.
I don't want this anywhere near me. But I like Jeff. I trust his, especially when it comes to beer. I really trust him. So I tried it and was absolutely blown away. I just thought, wow, it gives this no fishiness at all. It was just kind of tastes like a little bit of the ocean, the salty, briny counterpoint to a really well-made stout. Just blew me away. That I was like, wow, never would have thought that. So I'll go with that.
Right. Jared, can you share your social media for yourself and your company so people can reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our websites, bobbrewingcompany.com. We try to keep that up to date with everything that's going on. Or we have on Facebook, it's Forward Operating Base Brewing. Then Bob Brewing on Instagram. I'm on Twitter as well, but my Twitter presence is so small, it's kind of embarrassing. But it's mostly just the random musings of a bored business owner.
So another good question. In the past, people would have like, here's my personal life, here's my business life. Nowadays, like everything is like this life, right? There's really like no curtains between business and personal, right? How does that fit been for you?
It's tough, because while me and my wife Jennifer are, pretty much Bob Brewing. When we're at home, we got to turn it off, and I'm not very good at that because I'm always thinking of something, or maybe there's, like I said, like I always have that feeling of, am I wasting time? So I'm always, usually it's her saying, put your phone down, just relax, watch the movie. But yeah, we have our own personal values and time that we try to give people glimpses into who we are as people, so that we're always being honest and transparent with who we are, with also trying to just, sometimes you just want your private life to be private.
So talk about the points of taking breaks, right? I think one time, maybe a year or maybe 2 years ago, you and your family just out of the blue went to, I think, Leavenworth.
Sure.
Like I'm going to Leavenworth.
Yeah.
The business is going to do what the business is going to do. I'm going to trust my people. We're going to take a break.
Yeah. It's tough. Handing those keys over and just saying, it'll be what it is. And, they'll, but when you get good people in there, that even if they don't do things the way I did it, even if they don't handle a problem the way I would handle it, they're going to handle it, and they're human, and I wouldn't have them there if I didn't, at least trust them to make a call for, even if it's not the call I want them to make, that they did it for the same values and reasons we have. So everything's going to be fine.
So another great point. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they only want to hire people who do something 100% like they do, right? Not realize you 100% really isn't that great anyway, right?
Right.
So even though you hire or bring someone who does 8% like you do it, their 80% might even be better than yours, right?
Sure.
A lot of people don't get that, I don't think.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of my employees just got back from deployment, and he was deployed with National Guard, and just got back a few weeks ago, and yesterday was his first day back at actual work. And when I stopped in on my way, stopped into the brewery this morning on the way up, I just looked at it and was like, this guy did more work in probably 5 or 6 hours than I would have done in a couple days, because I'm just all over the place trying to focus on 18 different things at once. That really not an efficient employee of my own. But when you see that, it kind of blows your mind of like, okay, I got somebody right in the right position, the right person in the right position.
So you bring up another great point.
Sure.
Like a lot of entrepreneurs, like I know myself, you have all these things going on, 10, 20 things.
Yeah.
And you're going back and forth, but then you've done 20 things, like 10% of the time, you've never focused on anything.
Sure.
How do you focus on what's important that day? Or how do you even decide what's important that day and focus on that?
I don't know how to explain it that really be valuable to other people. For me, I'm just always looking at, writing my list of, what's a must get done. Um, what's something what can wait, and if, and trying to tackle that list and do one thing at a time as good as I can. But
Yes. And if I could say this earlier for our listeners, we're gonna have the links to his t-shirts, his social media,
yeah,
also Meadows' book, so you can buy our book. I mean, it's a great book. You should read it. Even I got a lot of stuff out of it.
Thank you.
So the links are in the show notes, and the show notes at www.cabinethrblog.com. And be sure to share this podcast. So, Jed, we're coming end of our talk. Can you give us any wisdom or advice on anything you want to talk about?
No, just really just a lot of, like, something you touched on earlier is, a lot of people think, oh, I've got a great idea for a business, but they've never really done what I call that, personal inventory of who they are. Meaning look at all the giftings you've had. I know, because my faith, I believe, that we are given certain gifts, and if we're using those in ways that are counter to the things we've been naturally good at, meaning, what have you voluntarily put in, a lot of time to, with knowing you're never going to get paid for it. What are you constantly focusing on? What's always on your heart? And if your business isn't one of those things, then it's probably not a good business for you. Because if you're going into it just because you think it'd be a good business instead of something you're uh, truly passionate about, and you got to be careful when you say follow your passion, because we can all follow our passion, but it might not make any business sense to do that.
Yeah. If your passion is to play basketball every day, you're probably not going to make a lot of money playing basketball every day.
Sure.
Hey, Jared, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
And to our listeners, thank you for your time as well. Remember to be great every day.